Hey, hi, how you going? It's me, Valstride, and today I'm going to show you how to spice up your base building with some of my favorite base building features and furniture designs. Let's check it out. So today I'm going to give you a total of 5 designs, and the first of these is going to be the sports bar that you see here, which I've used in a couple of different builds, and it's really good for making a dramatic entrance. It's going to make your build look really lived in, and it does use a nice little trick to allow you to float the TVs on the wall, which once you've learned, you can start using it for all sorts of things. So for today's example, we're going to fill this empty space here, but obviously you can change it around a little bit to suit whatever space you need. This is just the one I'm going to be working with. So to start with, you want to go ahead and get your wall panels in whichever building material you want to use, and then you want to create a 2x1 rectangle and build it all the way up to the roof. So for me, it's going to be 3 stories high. For you, it might be 4. It just depends on the size of the room. But once you've built it all the way up to the top, you can go ahead and delete the bottom layer, which is where the bar is going to eventually go in. Now you can switch over to your glass panels, and I like to put a couple underneath at the very bottom just for a bit of texture, and then you want to create a little wraparound area around the outside, and you should end up looking something like this, and you can see it starting to come together. Now you can create a temporary layer. We're going to delete this one a little bit later just so we can jump up there and start working. You want to go ahead and get your benches and start snapping them to the walls. So for this, you do need the alignment mode. For me, it's right trigger. For you, it might be something else. Go ahead and start building all of those, and now we can start stacking up our TVs. So make sure they're facing the right way, and again, you want to use the alignment mode here, snap them all together side by side. I like to use 3 on each panel, and then once you've got all of them in place like you see here, now we can go ahead and start deleting the benches underneath, and now we get that floating aesthetic. So after you've deleted all the benches, you can go and delete the scaffolding, and we should end up looking like this. Now we're ready to start putting the bar in place, but I'm actually going to start this one off with a pillar, and that's just temporary to create a snapping point for the bar itself. And this is a good tip more generally. I do recommend you do this to keep everything straight and well aligned wherever you can. And you can also see that I'm using the lines on the floor to space them out evenly. So, think about that kind of stuff when you're going through your builds. It does help keep everything nice and aligned. But now we're ready to go start putting in more of the furniture so we can place our stools all around there. We've got Anubis to help build them faster as we go. And then you can head up top and start placing your ivy. Now, I love this stuff. I don't really think you can get too much of this. It just creates a liveliness and an extra level of detail, and it adds a lot of color to the builds as well. There's no method to this. You just kind of place it wherever you can so that it looks natural and kind of random. Then you can go and start putting in all of your other furniture. I'm going to throw in some leather couches here, but if you want a more luxurious look, you can use the red ones. We've got some barrels here, and I like to use these wooden barrels in combination with the iron stools to create little tables all over the room. I think this gives it a really good bar look. Then you can switch over and start putting in some plants. I like to just scatter these pretty much everywhere. Just like with the ivy, you can't really have too many plants in the room. You want to make sure you use a nice combination of all of the different options we have, and I am hoping we get more options for these in the future. But by the end, you should end up looking something like this. Ends up looking really vibrant, and if you prefer the wooden floor, you can use that too. It does look really warm. It just depends on the overall vibe that you're going for. Next up, we're working on a plant box, and this one was made possible by the addition of half walls in Tides of Terraria. Now, even though this one is super simple, it's going to add a ton of character to your builds and make them look a lot more cozy. So for this one, we're going to start with whichever fence material you want to build in. I'm going to use the clean fence again, and unfortunately, these don't always snap into place where you've got pillars like this. So you can sometimes delete the pillar, snap the fence, and then put the pillar back. But for me, I'm going to have to place it manually because I've got a fence on both sides of this pillar. Then I'm going to switch over to my fountains, and I'm going to snap these in place using the alignment mode again. You want to get them roughly in the center of each of these tiles. And then after you've got your fountains in, you can switch over and you can build your street lamp. So I like to use the short street lamps so that they don't stick out too much, but you can use whichever one you like, and it should end up looking like that. Now you can go ahead and start putting in all of your plants, and I do like to start this with the large plants, and you do want to make sure you rotate them a little bit as you go so they're not all facing the exact same direction, and that way it just looks a little bit more mixed up rather than so monotonous. But then you just want to work your way down in the plant sizes. So I like to go with these ones with the little reeds last, these little white ones, and you just want to place those between all of the other plants. But once you've got all of those in place, it should end up looking something like this. And as you can see, this adds a lot of vibrancy and a lot of life into the build. The detail here just looks fantastic. You've got the light, you've got the running water. I just think these look absolutely gorgeous. And for the third feature, we're going to build a library, which is in contention for one of my favorite spaces across all of my builds. So this is the space we're going to use for this one, and we're going to build over in the corner. You want to start off with the bookshelf, which you do want to try and tuck all the way into the corner, but we don't want to manually place them because it's just going to make it harder to align everything. So instead, we're going to snap it to the middle of the wall on both sides, and then we get this awkward little space between. And to avoid that, we're going to use another building trick and use smaller pieces of furniture as temporary spaces. So get rid of the bookshelves, throw in a couple of stools. We want to use 3 on this wall and then switch over to the dunny roll for the other wall just because it's a smaller spacer. And now we can go ahead and put our bookshelves back in, and you're going to see that they get perfectly aligned and tucked into the corner. So this is going to create a much better join in the corner area. And then once you've got the corners in place, you can go ahead and build it out across the rest of the wall. But you're going to notice that if you snap directly to the original bookshelf, you get this annoying gap between them. And we don't want that. We want it to be nice and tucked up or butted up against one another. So we'd like to use the sliding feature, but you can see while the wall is in place, we can't do it. So you're going to have to temporarily delete the wall, come back, and now you can get that little sliding feature where you just want to edge it all the way up to the other one until you can't build it, and then go a step back so that it becomes blue. So you just want to find that transition point between red and blue while you're along this slider, and that's when you know you're as close as you can get. So you want to do that on both sides, and then you want to build yourself some temporary structure just so that you can stand on it while you build the upper layer. And then once we jump up there and start working on the top layer, you just want to completely repeat the process. So we're going to put a bookshelf on both corners, we're going to put in our spaces, and then we're going to temporarily remove the bookshelves, add a couple more spaces. So remember, it's 3 stools on that side, 1 stool and a dunny roll on this side, throw in your bookshelves, build them, remove the spaces, and then completely repeat the process. So delete all your walls and then start sliding the bookshelves all along the top section. And again, you can see here why it's really important to have that scaffolding to stand on, because it can be a little bit tedious to work on the upper layer. But once you've done all of that, you can go and put your walls back in, and we should be ready to start furnishing. So we're going to start this one off with the antique red carpet, which is going to give the place a really warm aesthetic. Now, do note that when placing these, you have to build the first carpet before snapping the next one to it. Otherwise, you're going to struggle overlapping them nicely, which is needed to get this nice join and make it all look like one big carpet rather than individual ones. After that, you can switch over to the antique bookshelves and start creating a couple of aisles with these. I'm going to just create 2 aisles, and again, you can see how we're using the furniture to space everything out while also keeping it all aligned. After your aisles are in, you can go ahead and start adding the remaining decorations however you see fit. So I'm going to add in a couple of the antique couches just to give it a luxurious vibe, and we'll place another seating area over here using the teacup tables. And finally, go ahead and add a bunch more plants just to get some more color mixed into the space. This one has a lot of flexibility and you can rearrange things however you like, but the end result should turn out looking something like what you're seeing here. But we've got 2 more to go, and this next one's another bar design, but this time we're looking at a Contiki bar where you and the pals can get on the beers. Now, I know many of you are always asking me how to build over water, so this is a perfect opportunity to jump in and find out. So we're going to start with a foundation piece on the beach and then build it out over the water using the floor tiles. But you are going to notice that you can't place more than 2 tiles in a row without putting down some pillars for extra support. So we're going to keep switching between the 2 and building it further out until we get far enough out over the water to lay down our platform for the actual bar itself, which is going to be a 3x3 square. Now you want to temporarily swap your middle tile for a stone one and add in a stone wall as a snapping point. So now you can switch over to your bar, snap it to that stone wall and walk it out from the middle until it's 1 wooden plank away from the central stone tile. Once you've built that, you can delete the wall and snap your second bar to the first, once again just walking it out 1 plank from the middle. But now you're good to go ahead and swap your middle tile back to timber and add one of the wooden pillars to each corner. If you've lined everything up correctly, then these should clip into the bar just a little bit, making it look like part of the same structure. After that, we're going to place wooden roof tiles in a 3x3 square on top, before adding our final pillars on each of the outer junctions. Then you can go ahead and wrap your timber fencing all the way around the outside before switching over to your wooden benches and snapping one of these to the center of each fence. Now you can go ahead and grab some of the Japanese floor chairs and place them on top of the wooden benches to make them look a little more comfortable before starting to place all of your wall ivy, which I like to hang from the central pillars as well as the outer ones so that it creeps up the fence a little bit. And lastly, throw in a few barrels for good measure before finishing it all off with, you guessed it, more pot plants. But we finally made it to the last feature on today's list, and this one might be super simple, but it's a great way to bring those large empty spaces to life. So this is the final space that we're going to be filling out, and this one isn't as methodical as the others. It's more about just scattering stuff all over the place in an aesthetic way. But we'll start off with the carpet, and just like in the library, you want to ensure that the ends overlap just a little bit so that it blends together. Then we can go ahead and add a hot tub in the corner, and I'm going to use the new Japanese style hot tub for this because I love the look of the cherry blossom. After that, let's throw in some pal beds and use a combination of large and small, and then we'll add a couple of tables to give it even more color thanks to the food and drink that sits atop. We'll chuck in some barrels, and then what I like to do is grab a bunch of the ottomans and place them at the edge of each of the pal beds to fill in some of the gaps around the floor. I also like to place the Japanese cushions on the floor in these kinds of areas, and then we'll finish it all off with even more pot plants. When you're done, you should end up with a lovely looking space like you see here, which is going to add a ton of vibrancy to your build and make it look even more lived in. But that's all for now. Let me know in the comments down below which of these was your favorite designs, and if you enjoyed this, remember to like and subscribe. It all really helps support the channel a lot. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.